There's been a lot of coverage of how the real estate industry, the housing issues that are going on right now are screwing over people. But there's one aspect of it that has not been talked about that much. But there was a good write-up on both NPR and NBC News about one aspect of this, which is racial bias in appraising. So when you go to sell a house or buy a house, it gets appraised, and experts are supposed to decide how much is this house actually worth, which influences things like your down payment, your mortgage, a lot of different things. It's very important. But what if who you are has as much to do with how your house is appraised as what the actual state of the house is? Well, it turns out that's exactly how it is. The appraisal industry continues to be criticized for racially based bias against black homeowners. Like in one case, a black Indianapolis homeowner who, after concealing a race, received an appraisal value of more than double that of two previous appraisals where her race was known. The three assessments were performed by different companies, with the first two coming in at $125,000, then $110,000, and the third coming in at $259,000. After she had a white friend pose as her brother. And this is not just an anecdotal thing. A number of studies have found that black-owned homes are undervalued when compared to those of white homeowners. This is especially true in historically black neighborhoods. A report back in 2018 by Brookings finds that up to $156 billion in cumulative losses for black homeowners can be traced back to this bias in appraisals. Anna, these numbers are insane. It's not $5,000. It's a whole nother house worth of value being taken away.
Yeah, and the findings of this experiment really go along with previous studies that show just how much of a disadvantage Black Americans are when it comes to a number of different issues, whether it's getting hired at a job that they're applying for, or whether they're trying to sell a product on eBay. There was this one study that showed that if an applicant for a job has a quote unquote black sounding name, they're far less likely to get hired for the job they're applying for. But if the same person with the exact same resume just changes their name from a black sounding name to a white sounding name, they're far more likely to get hired. In this case, I mean, we're talking about appraising property. And when appraisals happen, typically they look at comps, meaning other homes that are comparable in the neighborhood in order to draw their conclusions about how much the home is worth. It's amazing to me that even with that evidence of how much comparable homes in that neighborhood are worth, the appraisers still have the guts, I guess, for lack of a better word, I don't want to curse, to offer a much lower value for a home that's owned by a black person. Like, it's just, there's really no other way to describe it. It's clearly a discriminatory practice. There's no other real explanation for it. And yeah, it's absolutely sick. The entire real estate market in the United States and other developed countries, to be honest with you, has been pretty awful and has been discriminatory. It has a history of discriminatory practices. So while I'm not surprised by the findings of this experiment, I'd be lying if I said that it didn't enrage me, because it's just more insult to injury in what's already a difficult market for Americans to even be able to participate in.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like when obviously seeing those numbers and then the 259,000, that's this massive gap. That's absolutely crazy. And then the total amount that people are being robbed of. But even honestly, seeing that when she did it just posing as herself, one appraisal was at 125, one was at 110. That's a big gap. I mean, that's not necessarily a racism thing. It's just this is a really weird thing, appraisals that could make or break a person's finances. I don't know what the solution totally is to all of the appraisals, but it is clear that at the very least, they need to get more diversity and possibly more oversight into this. So it will probably not surprise anyone in the audience to know that part of the reason these appraisals are so racially biased is the vast majority of the people doing appraising are white. They're not black. You can see the breakdown right here. 1.3 identified as black or African American, 1.3% of the appraisers. So it is incredibly likely that these historically black neighborhoods are not having black appraisers who necessarily really know about the neighborhood, or let's keep it real, care about the neighborhood and care to research it in the same way? Do we think it's a good idea to just assume that even if we're not talking about explicit racism, that like some red hat wearers doing the appraisal, that they just think about it a little bit differently? They think about the future of the neighborhood a little bit differently. They think about a lot of things differently, and getting more diversity could really help in this area.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think that having more diversity in terms of who does the appraisals makes a lot of sense. I don't know how oversight in this area would look, but oversight could be an effective tool as well. And I also just want everyone to take a moment to think about how difficult the process of homeownership is for everyone in the country, but then that added layer of racial discrimination and how that has an impact every step of the way. It has an impact when it comes to being able to qualify for an actual mortgage. It comes into play when you're dealing with the sellers and whether or not they're willing to sell the home to you, whether or not you're gonna be able to find a quality real estate agent who's gonna look out for your best interests in finding a home in the best neighborhood for you. All of these things, every step of the way, people of color and particularly Black home buyers are at a giant disadvantage. And I think that it's about time that it's addressed, because again, it is difficult for everyone overall. It's extra difficult for people of color who have to deal with the discriminatory practices.
Totally. And finally, supposedly there's gonna be some stuff that Biden's doing. Just last week, they unveiled some new steps to help narrow the racial wealth gap, including addressing racial bias in home appraisals. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Marcia Fudge, is set to lead an interagency initiative to address inequity in home appraisals. We'll see. It's a big problem. We'll see what they come up with, but it's certainly important because we will often talk about the difference in overall levels of wealth between different demographic groups. Like, this has got to be one of the most individually significant components of that. Because building wealth in a house is one of the only easy ways for people that are not already wealthy to do it. So if you do that, you hold on to this house for years and years and years, and then they decide it's worth nothing basically, even though it should be. Well, all of that effort is gone. So we'll see.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.